So you've got yourself a DW735 planer, huh? Powerful, reliable, sounds like a jet engine in your garage. What's not to love? Oh, that's right. This is a project I did a while back. And as the finish wears, you can actually see where the straight blades of the planer hit the piece of wood. This is even after a ton of sanding. I'm Travis, and this is how I do things. Let's be honest. Straight knives do the job, but they leave your wood looking like it went through a minor identity crisis. That's why everybody's upgrading to helical cutter heads. Smoother cuts, less noise, longer life, less snipe, and tear out. But you've checked the price of those bad boys, right? They're more expensive than a fancy steak dinner for two. I mean, sure, your wood's gonna look great, but you might not eat for a week. Good news. I found a so-called affordable helical cutter online from a company called FindBuyTool, and they sent me one to test. It promises all the benefits without gutting your wallet. We'll see about that. In fact, this one is about $200 to $250 less than some of the more expensive heads. Sounds too good to be true? Well, I'm about to find out. For science! Or woodworking. All right, let's crack this open. Now, first impressions. It looks decent. It's got all the spirally bits, and it's heavier than a toddler. That's a good sign, right? It comes with the head with bearings installed, tungsten carbide inserts, wrenches to disassemble the planer and install the cutters, as well as some basic planer disassembly instructions. The carbide inserts are in these nice little cases with individual compartments to protect them. Now, to install the cutter head, I'll need to disassemble my planer. I'll start in the top, but before I disassemble anything, I'm going to unplug the unit and blow off and clean the area I'm working on. This will prevent sawdust and debris from falling into the areas I don't want it to go. Now I can remove these 4 top screws to remove the cover using the DeWalt tool. These are captured screws and don't come all the way out. Then I'll remove the 3 red thumb screws to remove the dust cover and expose the cutter head. Now I can remove the old blades. Be very careful, these blades are still very, very sharp and they can cut you very easily. I'd highly suggest some gloves so you don't cut yourself. Finally, I'll remove the 2 screws to remove the lock plate. Be careful not to lose the spring behind the plate. Lost a washer down in there I'll have to find later. Be careful with these washers on the screws. Now I'm going to work on the left side of the planer. First I'll remove these 3 screws to remove the side cover to expose the chain and sprockets. I'll remove the 2 snap rings and then pull the chain and sprockets off. Now I'll remove these 3 Allen screws from the gearbox and then pull the gearbox out and turn it away. Next I'll remove the helical gear with a 6mm socket. I used a piece of wood to keep the head from rotating while I remove the nut. Then I'll remove the snap ring. My snap ring pliers absolutely suck and I almost bought a new set just for this. Now I'm going to work on the right side of the planer. First I'll loosen the handle screw and pull that off. Then I'll remove the side cover by removing these 4 screws. First I'll remove this screw and this spring to remove the idler. Next I'll remove these 2 screws to remove the sprockets and chain. Strangely, their tool doesn't work for these and neither does the DeWalt tool. I stuck a piece of wood in the sprocket to keep it from turning so I could break the screw loose. Now I can roll the belt off the pulley. There's no need to completely remove the belt, just push it aside for now. Be sure to use gloves so you don't pinch your fingers. Next, I'll hold the cutter head and remove this hex nut. You're going to need a 24mm socket to remove this hex nut. I didn't have one, so I had to run to the store to get one. I'll pay attention to the order the parts remove so I can reinstall them the same way they came off. Finally, I'll remove the snap ring. To remove the old cutter head, I took a socket that fit just inside of the inner bearing race and a hammer and just tapped on the end until the bearings came out of the bore. Then I just pulled the old head out. I cleaned the bearing bores and put more grease on them. This should make it easier for the new bearings to slide into the bearing bores. The new head will go into the planer the opposite of how you remove the old one. One side has a smaller bearing and that side needs to go in first. I found a socket that was the same size as the inner bearing race to pound on so I didn't damage the shaft. As you're pounding, you're going to have to make sure that the bearing on the other side is aligned with the bore. Now that the head is in place, I can install all the tungsten carbide cutting inserts. This is pretty straightforward. Just set the insert in place with the sharp side out and install the screw. There's an anti-rotation feature built into the head so you can't mess it up. I only snugged up the screws for now. After each row I went back and torqued them all to 6 Newton meters with a torque wrench, which is what FindBuyTool suggests. There are numbers on the insert so you know which side you're using. I'm installing all of them on side 1 for now. This is pretty time consuming, but it's worth it for the benefits of a helical cutter head. I found a bit of a hack and I thought I'd share it with you guys. This tool is a little bit clumsy for starting these screws. Instead, grab yourself an extension and put your T20 on there and start them with that, and then come back later and torque all of your screws to 6 Newton meters. The really great thing about this setup is that if you have a damaged or dull cutter, just loosen the screw, rotate 90 degrees, and install the screw to 6 Newton meters. This will make your planer cut like new again. Well, after all of that, I was left with a sore back, some extra inserts, and some extra screws. So that's pretty cool. Some of the other reviews for this cutting head noted this too, but this is the nut that comes with the head. This is the one that came on the planer. There's not even enough threads to use this one, so I'm going to use the original nut. When you get this belt on the bottom pulley, make sure it's still tracking right on the top one. I was able to just push the belt like this and work it back onto the pulley. After a bunch of work, the cutter head is in. Now let's give this bad boy a test run. Well, it definitely did sound quieter for a planer. I ran the planer before and after the upgrade with a decibel meter on my phone. While my planer was running free, it was 89 decibels for both cutter heads, no change. While planing the same piece of walnut, the decibels went from 107 to 89 with the new cutter head. Wow. Now that is what I'm talking about. No more choppy finish where the blades hit. Look at this. It's smoother than my dad's old jazz records. This will save me tons of sanding time. So far, so good, right? I didn't really see too many downsides to this upgrade, except I've heard there is a little more power consumption with the helical heads and the cost. While this cutter is affordable by helical cutter standards, it's still not what I would call cheap. At the time of this video, this cutter head was $300 to $350. So if you're expecting this to be a $50 miracle, think again. But here's the thing, you get what you pay for. Even this affordable helical cutter makes a night and day difference compared to the stock knives. It's easier on the ears and the blades last about 40 times longer since you can rotate them and use all four sides. So is it any good? Absolutely. Will it make your woodworking projects 1,000 times better? Well, it's a tool, not a magic wand. But if you want pro-level results without selling your kidneys, this upgrade is worth every penny. If you'd like to buy one, I put a link down below. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it. If you found this helpful, give that like button a smooth, plain smack and subscribe for more DIY upgrades and woodworking adventures. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a lot of wood to smooth out.